Operation Bedlam. Welcome to the show, everyone. It's time for Operation Bedlam.
Right, well, I'd like to welcome back Jim Peakman, who is the writer of Operation Bedlam, which is a comedy series which has been going out on Hills 8 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. Now, Jim, you've been in the studio with me quite a few times, really, but I'd like to find a little bit more out about yourself, so a little bit about your background, where you studied, and how long you've been writing.
Well, I've been writing probably since school. We actually found some old creative books in the loft that my parents were clearing out the attic the other day, and I got good marks. I got a brilliant from an English teacher. Brilliant story, Jim. Brilliant story. And so creative writing's been one of my sort of strong points since school, really.
But what age, Jim?
So about 9, I would say 9 really. I started doing creative writing. Always been a bit of a dreamer, really. So, and I used to do like films. Like the family had a camera. It was like a big, old-fashioned camera, and you know, with a big tape. You had to put the tape in. It made a racket. And I used to get toys and sort of like make them into films and all that kind of stuff, and try out stop motion. I figured out stop motion by myself, and I can stop the recording and then put it there and then move it, and everything was like that. And then so I used to do all these little things, and then that sort of developed. And when I decided I didn't want to go into like what I consider quite a boring job for me, like computer stuff, and everything at school back in the old days was, you know, you've got to go and be a doctor, you've got to go and get grades, you've got to go get into computers. That was a big thing because the internet was sort of coming into its full force when I was sort of leaving school, and everybody was into computers and stuff like that. I hadn't got a clue what you know.
Well, I don't think necessarily the arts are always encouraged.
No,
you know, because it's how you're going to make money at doing that.
Yeah, it's which is a shame, really, because I mean, the old quote from Winston Churchill about the Second World War, when they said we've got to cut the arts funding, and he said, well, why are we fighting this war? You know, it's arts are very, very important, but they seem to overlook in schools and stuff like that. But it was a case of like, you know, you've got to learn the English language, got to learn some science, but really you've got to get into computers and stuff like that. But I decided quite early on that wasn't for me, and when I really decided it, I went to college to sort of pursue filmmaking. And
where did you go to college?
Henley College in Coventry. I went past it yesterday, completely changed since I was there. But good memories of that, because that was the first time. I mean, I didn't really have a great time at school because I was always a bit different than everybody else anyway. I mean, I went to Whitley Abbey School, and I felt like the whole thing was prison to me. So, and I didn't want to get involved, even though I did get involved with some like bad stuff that happened there. I never felt comfortable in that environment. You know, the kids would, you know, be throwing bricks at things and all that kind of stuff, or paint over fences, people's fences. And I didn't want to get involved in that. I was always slightly different. So when I went to Henley College, it was kind of like I met like-minded people, because it was the first time you didn't have to go to school. You know, it wasn't a prison, and it was like, oh, these are like-minded people like me, and I just found all these people, which is great. And I'm still in touch with, you know, quite a lot of the people from Henley College, definitely more than I am with anybody from school. I don't really see anybody from school, but keep up with my Henley College friends, and that's when I first started. Everything was a possibility then. It was just like, oh, we can do this, we can do that, and that's when the creativity really sort of started. It was at Henley College, really.
You know, I actually think that when you are artistic, you kind of look at the world in a different way, perhaps to other people. And I think this is maybe why creative people feel different, because I know that I certainly did when I was at school.
I 100% agree with you. I would say, though, for me personally, it was very hard to come to terms with being different or thinking different than everything. I mean, around... I say there were certain things like at school, because I was slightly different. I remember head teachers on on what they call the school report days, or the parents' evening. That's it, the parents' evening, and say, "Is James then, not Jim, but is Jim all right? Because he says these things that are slightly a bit concerning to us, or in the book, and no, that's just him and all that kind of stuff."
Yeah.
And but I've always been that way. They've also, I said about clearing out the attic. My parents found a book. This is very weird. There was a woman in the street that used to live with us, and she was getting into child nursing and stuff like that. And she, for her graduation or something, she had to monitor a baby and literally write a diary of this baby's life for a year. And that baby was me. I was 2 years old. And this book, we found it, and it makes me out to be like some sort of baby genius, like Stewie Griffin from Family Guy. James was on the bus, and this woman said, "Oh, it's cold, isn't it?" And he turned around and he said, "Yes, it's cold enough to freeze your knickers off, love." Like that. So if that's true, I was coming out with weird things then, and I was 2 years old. But I just had an image of me with like a pipe and brandy at this 2-year-old. So, yes, because it's just. Oh yes, James likes his tea at a certain o'clock and everything like that. I say, Mother, I'll put on the tea now. It's 8 o'clock, So yeah, I've been different then, but on later life, it's coming to terms with it. It was quite hard. I know I went through quite a lot of counselling sessions and therapy and things like that because I felt so different than everybody else, and that used to depress me a lot. I used to suffer from depression. A lot of that. It's only sort of recently that I've been able to sort of say, yeah, I'm different, but it's kind of fun, like that. And yeah, you do see the world completely different than everybody else.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being different, is there?
I'd actually say, if the honest truth is, probably since starting Operation Bedlam, it's been the first time I've actually, in 30 odd years, actually come to terms with it. That, okay, I see it differently, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Where before I'll be so paranoid about it. It's just, why am I the one it always happens to? Or why can't I just be like everybody else? All that kind of stuff. But now it's just kind of like, it is what it is, so I don't care.
But then I think the world needs people like yourself to show that, difference isn't a bad thing.
No, it isn't. It wouldn't be so boring if we were all the same.
It would.
It'd be
well,
horrible.
let's talk about the comedy then. So, what were your comedy influences as you were growing up? What do you remember watching on the TV or maybe listening to on the radio?
Well, I would probably say that most of the comedy influences has come through my dad. He's into his comedy and stuff like that. So I think some of the early stuff I would watch would be like something like Tommy Cooper.
Yeah.
I remember watching him. There's a photo of me somewhere. I think we were at a holiday camp on a holiday, and I got up on stage as a sort of talent show thing and was doing basically Tommy Cooper jokes. It's my only time I've ever done stand-up, and I must have been about 6. And so like Tommy Cooper, that kind of stuff. And then it sort of went into like films, like Normal Wisdom. I loved Normal Wisdom because I could relate. The thing is, those sort of like people like Normal Wisdom and that kind of act, I always find that I latch on to comedians that I can relate to.
Yeah.
And who else? Like Marx Brothers.
Yeah.
Their Anarchy. It was like...
all quite physical comedy though, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as a child, I really got into Harpo because it was, very, very physical and very visually funny. It's only like later life I sort of got what Groucho was saying and Chico and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that kind of stuff. But then when I was going through, well, like now, the more I grow up, then I sort of got into things like, I saw more of myself in somebody like Peter Sellers, and I was just like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because he was quite mad, and so Spike and all that kind of stuff. But when I see like a documentary on them, I go, okay. And it's quite comforting for me, because it's like, well, I'm not the only one. You see, that's the thing. When I was going through all the therapy and all that kind of stuff, I thought, I'm the only one who's like this. And that's how I think creative people feel sometimes when they're feeling down and lonely. Why am I the only one who can see this and all that kind of stuff?
But if you look at the creative people that you've just mentioned, Spike Milligan, Peter Sellers, real big kind of personalities, but they had this kind of what can I say? Well, I mean, they suffered with kind of depression. Spike Milligan, I think, was bipolar, and I wonder
I
if
was
that's
tested for that.
Really.
Yeah.
And
I
I wonder
was
if
actually
it's
diagnosed with bipolar, then undiagnosed with bipolar. They couldn't even get that
Does
right
that
with me.
even happen?
Yeah, they couldn't even get that right with me.
But do you think
Yeah.
it is because they actually see things differently?
Probably, because that's just, I see like society kind of treats people that do see things differently as a bit mad or weird. But then you sort of, if you can learn how to use it, like I've sort of been able to now, like you say with the comedy, because it's quite silly, and I've turned it on. Well, I feel like I've turned it on them now. So like, because they are a joke to me, you know.
So, how did the Operation Bedlam team meet? Because how many of you involved in it now?
There's 4 of us that do the show. It came from when I used to be in a band called King Hermit. I met up with Mark Graham and Andrew Simpson, or we call him Geordie because he's from Newcastle. They were in another band together, and they had the same drummer as we did at a certain time. And we became very close mates, and especially me and Mark, we used to always meet up for a pint and all that kind of stuff. And we always found that, we've got the same sort of sense of humour, we have the same comedy influences and all that kind of stuff, and we used to giggle at the same sort of stuff. We soon found out that we loved pranking people, so he would encourage me to get on stage as a character and then make people go, is this guy for real? I mean, is he actually like that? There was a time when they had a gig, the Black Belts had a gig, and I introduced them as Jim from Care and Community, and I got the name of the band wrong. And everyone was like, is this guy for real? Or was it, I played this really nervous guy, and I didn't know what I was doing. It was all planned beforehand.
Yeah.
And then people in the audience were all like, is this for real? I mean, oh, bless him. And then the people were coming up to the band afterwards saying, I feel bad for that Jim guy, he got it totally wrong and all that kind of stuff. But we were just giggling, me and Mark were having a great time. And again, that comes back to what we were just saying about turning it all on the people. See, I see people quite weird, so I like playing with that awkwardness out of people, and so that's how me and Mark met. Carson I met, if you don't know, Carson's a dwarf, and I was looking for a dwarf for 4th Floor Singapore, a feature film that I made, and he actually went to university, and I remember because he was the first person to speak to me on my first day at university. I walked through the door, and I had long hair and a beard at the time, and I walked in and he just shouted at me, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, in front of everybody. And it's just like the first day, so everybody's a bit like on edge and all that kind of stuff, and I was just like, cheers mate, you just made me feel about really small, and well, smaller than him then. And he was and since then I remembered him, and then somebody brought up his name when I was looking for the dwarf for the film, and I got in touch with him, and he come and did the film. And then obviously, but he is like, again, he shares our madness in a way. He's a character.
Yeah.
So me and Mark and Geordie now really get on with him now.
He shares that kind of feeling different.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, to think about it, I mean, I know Mark, I don't want to say too much of his personal life, but Mark has also gone through some issues in his youth and stuff like that, and that makes him feel a little uneasy with being. I know me and Mark had the same thing. In fact, it was just before we started the radio show, he used to come round for a cup of tea and stuff, and we would discuss, and I was having issues with being in crowds and stuff like that, and being around people, and he would comfort me at that because he's been exactly the same. So we all kind of get on at that sort of wavelength, that even each and every one of us have got some sort of connection to do with not fitting in with society in a way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool how we all meet like that.
Because I want to know a little bit more about the process of making an episode.
Well, it's very, very fast. It's kind of like the show, and I think sometimes there's a lot of pressure really to get it done ready for the next week, because I write it, we all obviously perform it, then I have to go away and edit it. And when I say editing, it's not like, you know, like putting it together like you would a film or anything like that, or it's quite raw, so I leave in mistakes that we've made and laughing and all that kind of stuff. I don't bother.
I think that adds to it.
Well, I just wanted it like it was a live show, quite raw and all that kind of stuff. And I feel there's a lot of things missing that in modern media. Just have some fun. So I don't edit it as such. I mean, there are times when we make mistakes and the odd 4-letter word might come out, so that has to go, obviously. But the editing is really just finding the best bits of certain... Well, we do 3 takes on the recording. The first take is basically a rehearsal take. And then the second and third one...
So do the guys know when you all meet up on a Monday night, they've already had the script?
They've had the script for about a day.
Okay.
And they might have had a chance to read it if they're lucky. And then on the Monday, it's very, very fresh. We don't know who's doing what. Well, we know who's doing the voices, like for what characters. I would write a list and I say, okay, you are this guy this week, and you're so and so. But the sound of the voices, we don't know until, well, we know personally, possibly. But then we don't know. I don't know what, like for example, Sergeant Sponge was going to sound like until Mark did it. I knew, like in the script, it's kind of said that like we knew he would have problems with his S's, but Mark's performance of it I hadn't heard, and it's when Mark does it, then that's when I'm just in fits of giggles because it's so funny. And or Geordie's Captain Flange, we knew it would be some sort of like an old sea captain, but the actual sound of him, we didn't know.
Yeah.
Or even Herbert Charlie, they didn't know what it was going to sound like.
I must say, I do love the voice of Herbert Charlie though. He comes across as a very innocent soul.
Well, yeah, it is, because it's probably my alter ego.
Because let's just clarify, it's you that does the voice for
Charlie.
It's
me does Herbert Charlie, yeah. And but it's that innocentness, and I kind of like that, the fact that him being so innocent in this crazy world. Do you know, he doesn't see the craziness. Everything's mad going on around him, but he's still that quite innocent guy, and everything's great to him. Like in none of the episodes does he feel depressed about anything. He's just happy-go-lucky fella with his mate Nigel, who's sort of equally as like in his own little world as Herbert is.
And another character, Mrs. Coughlot.
Mrs. Coughlot. I mean,
that's Mark that does the voice?
Mark does Mrs. Coughlot, yeah.
I don't know how he manages that.
He struggles with it. I mean, he goes bright red, and I mean he's getting better at it. Well, it's in coping, not performance-wise. He's coping better with it. And when he first did cough a lot on the first episode, he was nearly sick because most of it is him coughing for real. He'll start and then he'll cough for real, and he was dizzy after the first time.
Yeah.
He was just like, "Can we stop a minute? Because I just feel really dizzy." And which I'm not surprised, because he really puts it into it. And that's what's great about Mark's characters. They're always either shouty or have some sort of really weird thing going on. Where my voices are sort of individual voices. I can go from like either the high pitched kind of Herbert Charlie innocent voice, or to some sort of weirdo voice, or the villain Baron and all that kind of stuff, or Mr. Blood in episode 3. Like different tones of voice, but Mark's gets to the whole shoutiness and stuff, and then Geordie brings basically fills in between that stuff with the narration and different voices that he does, and then Carson just shouts everything anyway, so there's no acting going on with him.
So like you say, you're the writer and you've been writing every week. How, where do the storylines come from? Is it kind of a thought that you have, right, I'm going to go with that? I mean, what is the process of the story, then putting it together, characters, where does it all come from?
Mostly real life. It's stuff that I see. And kind of going back into like what we were talking about earlier, saying like looking at the world differently than everybody else. Instead of worrying about it and getting myself depressed about it like I had been for so many years before, I'm using it now, and all that stuff that would annoy me before or depress me goes in.
Yeah.
Like, For example, Mrs. Coffelot is a real woman. She lives
Really?
she lives next to me. She's my next door neighbour, as she is Herbert Charlie's next door neighbour. And I sit there, and I can be writing. It's quite irritating when you're trying to write, or you're just chilling out after a long day, and you can just hear through the walls. And then she'll walk round. I mean, she probably isn't going to listen to this. I don't care if she does, because she's too loud. And I just thought, that's a character that has to go in. I'm not going to let it annoy me. I'm going to write it, and it's going in.
Yeah.
The stories, everything that Herbert does, it's quite weird, because as crazy and surreal as it seems, most of it's all true, or stuff that's happened to me. Like I was saying about Herbert being the alter ego, it's all true. What did I say? Episode 4, Herbert joins the Army Reserves. I spent probably about 3 or 4 months with the Army Reserves last year, and looking to go back in it again at some point. So Herbert, that was one thing.
Yeah.
The hotel in episode 3 with the vampire. I didn't come across a vampire, but I remember being in a hotel in Belgium, I think it was, with my dad. We were on a darts trip, and it looked like it could be a vampire, and I can remember saying, like, look at this, it's all true. I've never worked for MI6.
Well, that's yet to come, maybe.
Yeah, but I like the Bond films, so that was just basically one of them.
So, this isn't your first piece, because as you say, you've done a film, which I saw and thoroughly enjoyed. So, different styles of writing, how does it differ in the writing process?
Well, that film that you saw, for Flora Singapore, that was done, I co-wrote that for a start, so that was me and another guy called Michael Smith. And that was fun at the time, writing that. It was a good experience, because I'd never done that before. For Operation Bedlam, I think it's because this is the first time it's me, like really me. I'm not trying to impress anybody, because all the other stuff that I did, because before I was doing Operation Bedlam, I was working with a company called Blue Ridge Films. I was a managing director of them at the time. And when you're working in a group like that, a real company, it was a limited company and still is, you have to be so careful about what you do. And the whole aim of it was to try and get somewhere. I was deliberately writing to impress certain people, to try and get
Rather
the film
just
known.
have fun with
it.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, when doing Operation Bedlam, this is complete freedom. And again, it comes back to that whole sort of, I don't care anymore. I don't care what people think about it. I know for a fact that the comedy snobs aren't going to like it. There's probably a lot of people my age that's like, that's not funny, that's just silly. That's silly behaviour. There's, who does he think he is, writing that kind of obvious pun. But yeah, it's like my prank on them people. And I know Mark joins in that sentiment as well.
Well, it's kind of like that saying, isn't it? Any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah, but we just get on with it. It's like, we're not making Operation Bedlam for you or anybody or friends. I don't want any recognition of like people. I'm not. Basically, I used to be in a band called King Hermit, and it was always like, oh, please give us some feedback, please give us some feedback, please come to the gigs, please buy these tickets, all that kind of stuff. Or when you're working with a film company, it's like, oh, please watch my film, please leave me some feedback and all that kind of, please. I'm begging all the time. And with this, I just like, I can't be bothered. Here it is. This is when it's on, Hills FM, Tuesday, 8 o'clock. And but I can't be bothered to keep begging people. It's there that people want to listen to it, and if they like it, great. If they don't like it, then that's fine also. But as long as we do, we're making Operation Bedlam for the 4 of us, because we have a good laugh as mates in that room on the Mondays that we record it, and that's what it's all about to us. And the moment that it's not fun for us, then we'll stop.
But how has it been received? Because I mean, I've heard really good things. People said, I am loving it. It's, I mean, it's wonderful for the radio, because we've never had anything like this before.
It's actually taken us by surprise. I knew, and I said to Mark, that it's going to take maybe a series of this for people to latch on, because it is quite surreal, it is quite fast paced. I was quite surprised that more and more people it's starting to grow quite fast now. Like we've had people over Twitter. I mean, our Twitter followers are growing quite rapidly daily. That's because we're publicising it in the right places. But there are people like send us messages like each week. We have like a little following of people that love to listen to it on the radio, because obviously like we've got the iTunes download for a repeat if they miss it, and obviously like the celebrity sort of world of a few of them have.
Name a few.
Well, we've got Nancy Cartwright, who's the voice of Bart Simpson and many other characters in The Simpsons, and also the Rugrats. She follows us on Twitter. She actually dropped us a favourite last night or something. I think Geordie tweeted something last night. She dropped us a little favourite on that. Hacksaw Jim Duggan of wrestling fame. He's a Hall of Famer in WWE. He follows us and he favourites or retweets us probably about 3 times a week. I'm going to have to get myself a Hacksaw Jim Duggan t-shirt, I think, for any photos coming up, because he really sort of promotes us quite well. Obviously, a message from Eric Idle before the show started. We had a good look. It's a good place to start, meaning radio, because that's obviously where he sort of did. But well, people all over the world as well. We have people listening from Singapore, Switzerland. I've got a friend over there in Switzerland who works for Disney. She's loving the show over in Switzerland. Who else? China is the next one.
Wow.
It's it's growing. There's been 1 or 2 sort of negative things. We put it out on a British comedy forum thing, and there was a fella who just doesn't like anything. Says
there's always one.
No, but he said our performances were really good, but sack the writer.
So what are your future plans then for Operation Bedlam?
Well, we were talking of maybe the possibility of doing a live 10-minute version. We were looking around the city of places where we could do that, or maybe open mics and stuff like that, just to try it out, just to see what it's like, and do like a live version, and maybe advertise it to a few people that like the show and say come down and see what you think of it live and stuff like that. Writing a few songs as the characters is another thing, because obviously there's going to be a gap between the series while I have a break of writing. But we want to keep something going, so like we're thinking of doing maybe like a few songs here and there as the characters. I know Mrs. Coughalot has already got a song out on YouTube. She does the Laughing Policeman, but it's
I've heard it. It's hilarious.
It's brilliant. If you ever feel down, if you ever feel tired, that is the song to listen to. Mark doing the Laughing Policeman as Mrs. Coughalot. It's on YouTube. It's brilliant. And obviously we've got the show finale or series finale coming next week, which we hope to be like a good send-off and good wrap-up of the series, so you've got to all tune into that.
Yes, and I think we ought to say that of course it's every Tuesday at
8 p.m. 98.6 Hills FM. I've started putting that in the show now. Have you noticed? There's always something to do with hills in the
well,
show.
Jim, thank you so much for chatting to me, and all I can say is I wish you the best, because, you know, to me, I just love it, and I'm looking forward to the next series as well.
Oh yeah, should we tell them all that we're going to do another series, because nobody knows yet?
Oh, yeah, you tell them that.
Well, you just have. Yes, folks, we're going to be another series of Operation Bedlam coming soon to Hills FM exclusively.
But if you have missed the first series, then we are going to be repeating that. So, yeah, look out for that. Okay, thanks again, Jim.
You can go get coffee now.
Operation